And I did online concert, and actually, to be very honest, it was a kind of ego boost, because from myself, by myself, I didn't enjoy at all. Okay, if I play together with other people, it's, yeah, it's okay, it's not bad, but in my opinion, I always preferred rehearsal over concert, because rehearsal is intimate, and in rehearsal real music happens. When we show to someone, it's already not so intimate, but it has a magical atmosphere. And this is what, yes, actually, what we are practicing now to make anything online. This format doesn't exist for real. So here's my question: shall we keep this because we need this, or would be better to just little calm down, wait a little more? Okay, now you can be with your family. Nice. Actually, for us, it was also fantastic period. So I could come much closer to my daughter. It was fantastic. Isn't it enough to just cool down? So what do you think?
I don't have the answers to everything, but you make me think of things, and I appreciate that you share your ideas. Um, I feel I feel like the only way to keep the online things that we're doing is by mixing them with live things, making hybrid. It's a little bit like social media, right? If you look at Facebook all the time, but you don't see the people in real life, it just gets like less real and less in. So it's always when it's mixed with something real that your interest stays. I do feel like anything real life is so much better than online. There is no question. It's like if I was with the five of you in person, my heartbeat would go like, "Ah," and then I would feel like nervous, and it would be exciting, and now I'm like, oh, I'm pretty relaxed, it's like super weird. But then at the same time, I'm meeting you. So like if ever I get to meet you in person one day, that experience is going to be enhanced by the fact that we already talked. So, and I was thinking about competition and like anything. Like the issue now is that classical music is like mostly for the upper class, right? And for me, I think about that a lot, and I'm like, how can we make it more relevant for at least people to like experience it, and like so it becomes this more welcoming place for anyone of any class. And I feel like if we come back in person and we do the same thing that it was, like meaning series for people who have to pay their tickets that might be too expensive for them, or that it's just like well, I play so much chamber music and it's always the same kind of people who go, is just favoring the upper class so much. And there are programs that cover more and that offer more, but I feel like in the majority, that's the issue of the in person. So I wonder if maybe the online thing could help making classical music more accessible and more welcoming to more people. Like even in competition, like let's say you have to fly to go to do the semifinals. What if the semifinals were online, and then the competition pays for everything for the finalists, and then that allows everyone to really be considered equally and participate. So I don't know if there are more solutions in that direction, but I totally agree that we are human beings and we need that. And actually, like it is stressful to be social. It is stressful to engage in going out. It requires courage, and I think we're not facing it anymore. And so when it start again, it's going to be much harder to say like, hey, like I'm going to go somewhere I don't know anyone and see how that feels, as opposed to just like, oh, I'll check what they're doing online and see if I miss anything, right? Like I think a lot of people are going to like be encouraged to stay at home, me included. And I feel like it would be good to find a way to promote the richness of the human experience of just being together, right? um, and then I was also thinking about what you say, Mariam, about the when we create online content, and we have to be careful about how we put it out there. Like that's a question I like ask myself, but I also wonder for my students, like, what do you mean by that? I'm like, oh, I'll record a piece at home, right? I got my cameras, like I can do this, like it's cool. I couldn't do it before. But then what do I do with that recording? Like, do I just put it out on YouTube and I tell the world on Facebook that like I've done this? That still feels like a little forced. I don't know. I'm not very comfortable with creating an online presence like just like that. It's sort of like I feel like I need a better frame, but I don't know where to find that frame. And I want to advise my students in that way too, like what should they put, what and how, in which um, frame they should like think of how it could be beneficial for them.
Just to go back quickly to what ISTVAN was asking, like, can't we just like walk away a little bit from all this online stuff? You can't. I wish you could. It has made my stomach turn half the time to have to see one more a cappella 6-quadrant thing of somebody playing with themselves. But at the same time, people needed something to get them going through this confinement. Now that we're coming out of it, why are we still holding on to it so much? Because a lot of it's fascinating, right? A lot of it is like, I know Nicolas Baldero, maybe too, Romy, like he is in his element. He is putting out all this crazy stuff, and all of a sudden people know who he is and that he is this extreme talent, and what he does well. And okay, so that is now this whole other chapter of clarinet playing that has just developed. It's not like it didn't exist before, but now it is made available to everybody. What was something else that was made available to everybody that we want now for free, that we used to have to pay for without question? Newspaper. That's to me the biggest equal right now as to what happened to the newspaper industry and what's happening to the music industry. Like people don't have to pay for CDs anymore, and that is our hard-earned value. Right now, we put in 10, 15,000 of our own dollars to make a recording that we're basically going to just have to give away for free. We might coop a few thousand at the end of the year after concerts that we like perform and have our little CD table afterwards, or at the boutique, and you hope that they sell. So all these things have changed what people perceive as value. You and I perceive the human interaction as value, but there's a lot of people right now who are devaluing that. And how do we bring that importance back? What you don't know, you don't miss. That's one thing that worries me with the younger generation. They don't know this joy and this, smell the sweat, see the spit at the coming out of the bell of your horn, and like that sound of the clapping. I mean, what's the sound of one hand clapping? It's like nothing. There are things that we will slowly desensitize ourselves to if we don't encourage that. So if it has to be in smaller settings, great. If it has to be in non-traditional concert spaces. Romy, I will say that, a lot of my career with Imani Wins, we spent a lot of time bringing music to people who wouldn't normally come to concert halls. And so that whole drive, which is reaching out to those audiences, which we like to call outreach, but like we're just reaching out to audiences that wouldn't normally come. That is still one of the more accessible parts of chamber music, right? It's portable, it's great, and that's why we can bring it. And so we have a responsibility as chamber musicians to keep doing that, to bring it to communities that just don't have access to it so easily, because that's where the passion develops. You get a school of 600 Haitian kids, and if you can just reach 2 of them, it's a success, right? Because those two people will be sensitized, and it's like a ripple effect. And so we do have to have pride in our content. So yeah, record something. Choose if you want to put it out there. Maybe just put one movement. My life has been always in person. To have to establish a YouTube channel, oh my God, one of my colleagues was like, stop doing the Ken Burns effect, Mary. Because I learned how to do it, at the beginning of the confinement. And I was like, oh, everything has a great transition. And, I thought I could, edit videos. I don't know how to edit videos. I need to do that more with, the real stuff. And there will be, we're going to date ourselves with the content that we put out, right? As how we put it out, how we distributed it to the world. But there is an audience for both now. And whether it will be elite or separatist, but there will be an audience for both.
Before the pandemic hit, I actually judged 2 competitions over the holidays that were both virtual. One of them was video submissions. One of them was just audio submissions. So that was a really interesting thing. That was the first virtual competition I had ever, both of those first virtual competitions I've judged. And the really interesting thing, particularly the one that was just audio, was the quality, like Miriam was talking, the quality of recording that was submitted. Some of them, the mic was way far away in the hall and you had a really hard time hearing clarity and what was going on with the intonation on. You couldn't really make much out of what they were doing with the music. And then there were others where the mic was right on top of them and kind of similar, almost distortion. And so then it was the ones that, it was that happy medium where they had the mic at the right distance and maybe somebody did a little bit of editing and fixing to the like reducing room sound or something. That those are the recordings that really popped out, I think, to those of us that were listening. And we all listened independently. And then we met over the phone on a conference call and discussed our, what we were thinking about, where our top 3 or 4 were, and came to our conclusion that way. And all the while, we didn't know who the competitors were. We didn't know if they were male or female. We didn't know what countries they were from. So that was actually, I really liked the anonymity of that. I thought that was really interesting that we just purely went on what we heard. I worried for those recordings that weren't as high of quality, because what if those were fabulous performances, but they were at a disadvantage because they didn't have the proper equipment? So I think if we're going to continue on this vein of like virtual competitions, we need to be sure there's maybe some guidelines as to your microphone needs to be this, and you can't edit within a take, but that we need to be able to hear very clearly the balance between the two. And having just finished listening to 64 different juries and barrier exams this week for my job, it's a similar thing, that getting the balance with the piano when they're working with virtual recordings and such. The other competition I judged, the first one, the audio one, was just a clarinet competition. Then the other one was multiple instruments, and it was video. And it was interesting. I tried at times to just not look at the video and use my ears and listen, but there was such an engagement with some of the video recordings, or the other way around, that if the player wasn't engaging. So there is, as we've been talking, that human component of it. How is the player connecting with their audience? And so if you're doing a visual virtual submission, we need to be thinking about not just the playing, obviously, but the presentation. How is the video quality? Is the audio quality working? Is everything synced up? So it was a really interesting experience. And then just a few months later, we dove into this pandemic. And while I haven't done any judging during the pandemic, thinking back to the contrast of that virtual competition and then live competitions, I've judged that in a live competition, sometimes you're far away from the performers in the concert hall. And so you do have to listen to the full picture. And I remember when I was sitting so far away, you could almost not see their faces. So there is an interesting dynamic there with the virtual, that you can see a little bit closer, and their interaction and how they're feeling the music, how they're expressing the music. So, but that's the extent of my experience. But I think it's all coming down to audio quality and what we're hearing from those competitors, and how does it contrast live. I like the point that you have the semifinals virtual, and then they cover the expenses of the competition for the finalists, because I know many of my students, if they made the finals, they might not be able to afford to travel to compete. So that is something we need to consider in all levels of a competition.
I would like to share with you my experience because I do remember in a few online competition, but as well I organized one of this. This year was the third edition. It is International Music Competition Opus. It's a multi-instrumental competition, and the main idea was to help especially younger generation, small children and teenager, um, to um, to um, uh, uh, co- um to make no how to say, to share their experience, their skills, not only, for example, in their country, like in Poland or in Hungary or England, but as well with some other musicians from different country. And it was because, of course, not everybody can go abroad and take part in a competition in different country. So it was the main idea. But this year was really hard because I noticed that a lot of people, for example, send the same recording for different competitions. So I think it shouldn't look like this because, and it's as well the good point for a teacher, because if the students send the same recording for a few competitions, they can't learn nothing more, because if it's the same program and it's sending a few times, what is the goal? Only to get the prize, nothing else, I guess. So I think this is the most important thing for us, that we should tell the students and show them that they shouldn't make something like cheating, that they should prepare the new recording, maybe new program, and send to the competition, because thanks to the recording, of course, they can learn a lot, because they can improve their skills, they can't make stress because of the camera and microphone. I think there are really positive things, and such experience can help them to play normally at stage in the future, for example, after the pandemic. So I think it's really important. And as well, the other things, it's the quality of the recording, because not everybody has possibility to play with piano or have access to the concert hall. So sometimes there are recordings making at home. And of course, it's great because I see and that somebody really would like to do the recording. And even if it's not a good background, so this person tried to do something, and I really appreciate it. But of course, if we have the recording making for solo instrument, and we have good quality recording making in a concert hall, so it makes really a big difference. So I agree with Julian here that that it's really hard part of the online competition. But of course, thanks to online competition, students can have less stress. So it's a good point as well.
Dr. Stephanie Zelnick, you guys know her, and they are a Zell duo. We did this recently, gosh, it was last weekend. And so we had 3 divisions: junior, senior, and professional. And it was very cute and interesting to see how everybody submitted. There was a lot of people. We had like some very good professionals, a whole bunch of collegiate, a bunch of young people, and some people just had didn't care at all what they submitted. They just, went into their bathroom or their kitchen and just recorded something, squeaks and honks, everything. And then some people had a concert hall they had access to. A lot of people submitted their probably juries, as a thing. And some people had like multi-camera. And I definitely had a moment thinking, okay, at least for the collegiate, 18 to 22 years old and then above, which are the ones that showed me that they could get up on stage with all kinds of elements working against you and perform well. That's when when it started getting down to the line of, between this one or this one, who had that presence, who just came in there, walked in, and was able to perform. That definitely started separating a lot of players, because the ones who can get up on stage in a very controlled environment and stop and start and edit, and like you said, Julianne, oh, that's not the recording I wanted to send, let me do it over, but in the professional world, you don't have that chance. It's now or never. And I found that it does give us a false sense of security to some players, because this is not the world that it usually revolves in. And what if we now create two different worlds of people who are perfectly, and it's totally happening. There's people who can't tell quality because they're just on YouTube all the time, and so whatever's there is for them the standard, and they don't have to. We always talk about the young generation, 26-year-old old for the 20th time. We always reference the same recordings when we talk about who we listen to as younger players. It was all the Shippen recordings, and we have the same ones. We didn't have YouTube, so now that, like it's been said before, there's so many, we have access to so many things. It is definitely creating this big pool. Like at one point, nobody knew what good coffee was. We all just drank coffee, and then all of a sudden Starbucks came into, and then we Pete's Coffee and all these different people, and all of a sudden we all think we're coffee connoisseurs now. And you can do that for every subject, from tennis to clothing, and so there is a bit of this disposable culture that's happening. And in the clarinet and instrumental competition, I think it's great to have an opportunity for students to submit. It definitely gives them something to work for, and that was really important for a lot of students. And I found that I was happy to be able to provide, a little outlet for that. But it absolutely should not replace the in-person ones, but it's going to be a question of cost, and people will think twice before doing that. And so once again, a lot of what we'll come away with from this are the eliteness, people who can leave their family, people who can take, PCR tests for 85 euros each time. You gotta get up and go, people who can get on a plane, etc. So again, all these things, it's not that they're going away. It's just like, how are we going to shape them, and how are we going to influence how they're shaped so that they don't ruin the live contact that we need. Now, concert halls don't have the same overhead because they've decided to keep things closed, right? They've been stopping concert series altogether, and so then they don't have the same expenses, and that's because they're choosing to not open to 30% because it costs them more. So then they're able to keep some of their budget, perhaps for future planning. So there's a plus and minus to that. They're able to keep some of their budget, but then often they're a nonprofit, so they can't show a profit at the end of the year, so they have to do something. And some orchestras were able to use that money and pay their musicians through the season, which was great. And I wish they would all kind of get their own version of a Grammy, because I think that's amazing. And not all orchestras obviously did that, and some of them are more popular than others just because they get more media press. But there are actually a fair amount of grants right now, because don't forget that the people, like the 1%, they still have to donate money. They still have to do tax write-offs. So a lot of them have set up grants and foundations that are not necessarily as well known because they're new. But if you can find them, they've been popping up more and more. And some of them are regional, some of them are national. You definitely don't have that in Europe as much. It's a different funding structure. And that's a whole other risk too, because they've seen like, well, you can just do it online. What do you need sponsorship for? What do you need the money for this? Everyone's happy to hear these concerts online. You don't have to do it in person anymore. So there's that part. However, there's also been a new funding for the Corona-safe concert hall. So they all now have to have a supplemental budget for people to hire somebody to take the temperature. Now it's going to be a verification of your vaccine QR scan. Hollywood Bowl, have you seen what's happening at the Hollywood Bowl? They're literally putting people who have been vaccinated and can prove it, full vaccinated, in one section, and then there's like one little tiny section for non-vaccinated people that will be socially distanced, but they can still go to the concert, but they will be, you know, divided. So that all comes with its own funding needs, and there are now fundings that go specifically for that. So unfortunately, it means that the musician, the professor, artistic administrators have to look even more. But there is funding that's still happening, and especially for the state-sponsored or city-sponsored concert halls. So even though Lincoln Center is mostly private, you still get a lot of state funding. So that's still there. In London, I know one of my orchestras is in residence at South Bank. All that money had to be spent, and they put the money forward and put it into a lot of online stuff too, and outreach, a lot more online outreach, because that always looks good for grant applications. So it's not gone away. I think it's still actually quite healthy and even desperate in some places where people have to spend their money.
I'm part of a very small regional orchestra, and we have taken all of our programming online, with the exception of, I think they're doing a Baroque concert in early June. That's kind of the first in-person thing. We had some things on tap, maybe some children's concerts and recordings. We didn't get them done, but they have been seeking out a lot of regional funding and grants. And like Miriam said, there's so many out there, and it's just they've had to look, and they've been looking in places that they didn't look in previous seasons. And I feel like the musicians have been very engaged. We've been recording it's the Orchestra of Northern New York, and our little abbreviation is ANI, and so it's been ANI at home and ANI beyond the stage, and we've had interviews and all this kind of stuff. And then there's always, of course, a little, if you would like to contribute to the orchestra, please. And I think they've been able to stay afloat, but it's been really hard because it is a small region, a small orchestra. We're very remote, and so I would say that the board has worked really hard to just keep us going, so that when we pass the pandemic, we're able to come back from it. So I think that we see that side of it with these very small orchestras, and then you see the larger orchestras that, at least most of them able to continue to pay their musicians, but not all of them. There've been some people that have retrained and had to look at other fields just to put food on the table for their families. And so that's been a difficult thing for performers in this pandemic. So.
I ask myself every day about such kind of things. Not only the responsibility, do we have or do we have to have a responsibility on them? Because if I think about myself, when I was a high school student, just to make it more clear, in Hungary, we have a musical high school. So I mean, actually we call it conservatory. So it's really specifically for kids who want to be professional musicians. So why I tell this, because already who goes there, it's kind of obvious we turn out as a musician. But for example, here in Japan, even university students, it's not sure they gonna be a musician. And I didn't need, so I guess maybe all of you didn't need to get your ass kicked to practice scales or do this. No, you wanted, because you love it, you are interested about it, and you want to make quality. And but okay, not everyone is like that. And here comes your question, Cecilia. Do we have to have a responsibility on guide them? And yes and no. I have no answer. So this is why I'm asking myself every day, because my high school teacher, he never pushed us. He made a fantastic atmosphere for music. I loved the lessons, and that was enough. Who couldn't catch up, it's not his business. Who is not interested in any way, they will just go away from music life or something. But for example, in my situation, teaching in a university, I don't know, maybe I put too much stress on my own shoulder about taking too much responsibility on. I always feel I have to make them in 4 years to be able to get a job or to be ready for life. But no, or I don't, should I take the responsibility for this? Because actually I think in one hand this is on them, in another hand I really try my best. For example, I started before the pandemic and I finished in the pandemic. I last summer I released an online scale book called KOHAN 11. It's on my YouTube channel if someone is interested. It's I worked one whole year hard work to make it a drum beat accompaniment with my playing as a duo version, and it really works. I mean, so there are many students of mine, especially younger, who really got something through this. But also there are a few students who didn't even have any idea about I had this. Even they know I have a YouTube channel. They know I try to give educational stuff. Also, same story. Also last year, just together with the pandemic, I started a second YouTube channel, only in Japanese. It's called Kohan method, and only methodical things. And for example, I had a partner for this, and we made a video about Messager, Solo the Conqueror. And just my student came to lesson, and I asked her, oh, by the way, just last week we released a new video about Messager, and did you watch it? No. Maybe if you know the Kohan method YouTube channel. What? So she didn't even have a clue about I have this channel too. No problem. It's not pride for me. But you know, student comes, pays every week to have lesson. If she doesn't follow what you do, no problem. Okay, I told her, okay, please watch this video, because so for example, why I'm doing this, because that 10 minutes, what you can learn about this piece or how to make it easier, don't waste the time on the lesson. Do it at home. And after she watched the video, next lesson comes back. Okay, did you watch? Nice. Okay, let's go on. Some other thing in the same piece what came up. Ah, by the way, we also had a video about tonguing or something. And did you watch that too? No, she only watched the messaging. So what I want to say is basically you cannot help who doesn't want to do something by themselves. And I don't know, do we have to guide them? Yes, I know, because no, actually in this case I have to say no, because who wants to do something without your guidance, they will do. But who doesn't want to do anything, even if you put everything into their face, they will not do anything. So in this case, I have to say everything is very, very appreciated, because yes, so people need something. And for example, everything what I know about photography, videography, many kind of things, I learned through YouTube for free. So I'm also working as a videographer at this very moment, and I never took any lesson. I never took any class. YouTube, and I really believe in YouTube. I really believe that if we share everything, and also, for example, if I want to learn something and I have to watch again a stupid commercial before the educational stuff, I watch it. because yes, you do hard work, this is for you. And really, in this case, I have to say, this system is fantastic, and in this case, yes, we have to guide them, but maybe not the way how you proposed in your questions. I mean not with the reason, not with the wish of, yeah, yes, my kid, I want to help. No, I don't want to help you. I want to help anyone who is open for this. If you are my student and you are also open for this, I'm very happy to help you with this. But I think this is not a responsibility, but this is a very good thing to have.
One of the things that I talk to my students about is that they need to take advantage of all of the technology and the access to recordings at their fingertips. They need to be excited about that access. When most of us were students, we had to go to the public library and hope they had a recording, and maybe they only had it on an LP, and then you have to find an LP player that works, or maybe they only have it on cassette. And I remember going to maybe a CD store and asking if they had a recording, and oh, we can order it for you, and it was 6 weeks to get a recording of that one solo piece that I was studying. And these students have so many options: YouTube, iTunes, Spotify. I mean, it's endless, and they still sometimes don't take advantage of that unless we say, hey, did you listen to a recording? Did you listen to 4 recordings? Did you listen to 10 recordings? Because guess what? You have that access. But sometimes they won't go and just do it without us guiding them to that. The thing that I'm looking towards when we come back post-pandemic is now there's all these online accompaniments for a lot of our standard repertoire. And YouTube, you know, a lot of people have been very generous and shared these recordings, and you can slow them down, you can speed them up. As students are studying scores and preparing for their first piano rehearsal, wouldn't it be awesome if they could be so prepared because they've already played with a pre-recorded accompaniment that they know what to expect, and so that they reduce that rehearsal time because they're more prepared. They've studied the score in different ways because they've utilized that option available to them. Not just listen to some other clarinetist's interpretation, but the part without the clarinet. So I feel like we do need to guide them in this way to help them realize the importance of listening and studying the scores. It's not just put the clarinet in your mouth and go. We need to be constantly listening and studying the repertoire we're playing and understanding how everything fits together as a whole, not just our line. And the way we do that is listen and study the score. So I see that we need to encourage them to then have the desire to go and seek out this information. But sometimes they need that fire lit under their feet, that they know they've got it there. Well, it's there, and I can go listen to it whenever I want. But okay, when is that? Now. Between now and your next lesson, listen. Have a playlist. Listen to that playlist constantly. You're walking around campus, you're driving in your car, whatever you're doing. Have a playlist going and listen. And so I think we need to guide them in the ways they can do that, where it's, you're not just allocating this time of the day, I'm just going to sit and listen. No, do it when you're doing a passive activity. And sometimes we absorb it even more deeply when we do it that way in the repetition of that listening. So, so again, I feel like we need to guide them to have hunger to look for those recordings, and then we hope that as they get more advanced that they start doing that on their own without our guidance, because they know it's something they need to do as part of their preparation.
Julian, how do you give them hunger to have the wish?
And that's a really good question. You know, it's having them understand the importance, and perhaps it's more of them walking into a rehearsal after doing that kind of listening and research and having a successful first piano rehearsal and going, oh, that really worked. I should do that all the time. But sometimes it takes that happening first for them to realize, oh, I need to do that more. That really helped me. So it's sometimes they have to experience that first.
I also think of that and the boundaries and how to make them. And then also you cannot say, if you say too much, like you gotta do this, then it doesn't work. But if you say nothing, it doesn't work. And so like, it's like encouraging the good things and maybe highlighting the students that are doing those things. But I also I'm struggling with those things, and I'm sensitive to someone who's not responding, and it's like a hunt. How can I get this student to, wake up? But so I think it's a very good subject of conversation. We should meet again.